Sorry I couldn't be there today. I'm in Lawrence or coming back from Lawrence after our meeting here. So I wanted to share with you, I know we're reporting today about what the instructional groups are doing, and so I wanted to visit with you, even if it's by video, about what the math area has been doing. You should have copies of two syllabi that are out there. Now, these are very rough drafts of courses that we're looking at doing. One of the, as we've been looking at webinars and things like that as it comes to developmental-led redesign, there was one that really kind of spoke to me, and I loved the analogy of the basketball game, that as we think about students and as we think about helping students achieve what their goals are, it depends upon where they're at, where they start at. Typically, the ultimate goal, the basket, is for many of our math students, for many of our students, is college algebra. And so if that's the goal, success in college algebra, then let's look at where those students are at. And that's why I love that analogy. And so if you have a student in intermediate algebra that assesses into intermediate algebra, then in terms of the goal, in terms of the basket of college algebra, they are only one class away. So what's a way that we can help them be successful in college algebra even quicker? And they're assessed into intermediate algebra. So so we've got a plan for that type of student. We wanted to have a plan for them. Then you've got the students that are 2 or 3 classes behind the goal of college algebra, like in our basic applied math or basic algebra. And so the challenge of the webinar was to come up with a strategy to help those students reach that goal of college algebra, or whatever their career goal may be. And it may not even need college algebra. And so we have thought about those two things, and we've kind of come up with some plans for both of those areas. In terms of the students that are really close, they just need to do a layup. They're so close to college algebra, being in intermediate algebra. We are reviving a course called Intermediate and College Algebra. It's Math 1826. It's a 5-hour course, and you should have that syllabus there in front of you. What I've done with that document, it is different than the last one we had. I've revived the competencies to reflect the Kansas Core Competency Project. I've taken the competencies from the Kansas Core Competency Project for intermediate algebra and for college algebra and eliminated the overlap and put together kind of one competency list for kind of combining those two lists into one. And so that's what you see reflected in the course competency list. I have not changed the course description from what the original one was, although I think this may be a good time to adjust that. My personal opinion is I'd like to take out the last two phrases about mathematical induction and the binomial theorem. And obviously in that syllabus there, the instructional techniques and the expectations and those sorts of things have not been fleshed out yet. Now, the math area has had a brief discussion about this. I have put this document together and sent it out by email to them, but we have not had any significant conversations about the course description or the course competencies yet. But I think that document reflects a really good first step for us to be able to finish our work on that. I did check the transferability, the current transferability of Math 1826. So far, even though we have taken it off our books in terms of things that we regularly offer, and it's not in our catalog, it's actually still on the books. And so it may have to jump through a few hoops, but we should be able to revive it with relative ease. And it is still equivalent to nearly every school to a 3-hour college algebra class. So the student kind of, in essence, just kind of gains net 2 elective math hours. in some cases, but at least it gets them success in college algebra. And so if they assess in the intermediate algebra that first semester, we put them in this class, and then we, in essence, put them in college algebra. And so what would have taken a year to complete college algebra now would take a semester. And so we're able to get them to their goal quicker. It saves them time, saves students time, and it saves the students money. So that's intermediate college algebra. The other syllabus there is what we're going to do with those students that are assessing to basic applied math or basic algebra. Now, I will tell you this. There have been some very heated conversations within our group, and there are different levels and some significant differences and disagreements. We've had people say, I am so against this, I am not doing this, and being very, very resistant, all the way to, yay, let's do it. And there's a number of levels in between. So this has been very difficult conversations for us as a math department, and I will be very honest with you. It's due, it's overdue for these conversations, but there are certainly some significant differences. And as I present this, there are people in our group who are going to vehemently disagree with this. But anyway, we've looked at our competencies from basic applied math all the way through intermediate algebra. And we've ended up, by breaking those things up, we've ended up putting them together in 13 modules. Although this is my own personal opinion, I would still like to see us combine 2 of the modules still, and so that we can get it down to 12. It would seem that modules 4 and 5 to me into a single unit would work, but there is, again, strong disagreement on that. I'm standing alone on that opinion. But at any rate, but I'd like to still see if we can get it down to 12 if possible. Much of the, I've written out a sample syllabus for this, what I'm calling College Prep Math 1. Syllabi for, there will be a syllabus for College Prep Math 2, a College Prep Math 3, all 3 of those courses being 3 hours each. And I would put a College Prep Math 4 together as well. It would be a variable credit course, 1 to 3 hours, and all that description is there in Part 3, so I'm just going to kind of trust you to read that. Also in Part 3, you'll find that you'll see the topics within each module, just kind of a general topic area of what you would expect to see and what students would expect to see in each module. And you can also see in Part 3, well, the vision here of the College Prep Math 1, 2, and 3, and 4 is these become shadow courses. And I know this seems kind of strange, but other schools have done this. Whenever they first did this redesign of some of these schools, they started off by using the regular courses they always had. So they would have used basic applied math, basic algebra, intermediate algebra. But they ran into problems with that, similar problems that we found when it came to the master learning piece and trying to continue with it. They had the same difficulty. And so at this one particular school, I remember the report was the registrar was the one that kind of came up with this idea initially about this idea of a shadow course. And it worked out better. So I don't want to repeat their mistakes. I want to look and see if we can model what they finally figured out. But this is a shadow course. So when a student, so in our course listing, they would enroll in College Prep Math 1, College Prep Math 2, College Prep Math 3, and they would certainly get a grade for that course. But what's more important is that it's reflected back into what we know as basic applied math, basic algebra, intermediate algebra. So even though the students are not enrolling in those courses, they need to be getting, in essence, credit for those courses through the modular system. And so these are shadow courses, and so you can see in part 3 what the modules, what the numbers are, and what that would then reflect into the previous, the basic applied math, basic algebra, intermediate algebra sort of setup. I have also personally added in stuff in the expectations in the instructional area. Now, please understand, these are things that have not, I can't stress this enough, not been discussed by our math group at all. These are just ideas that I've garnered from other schools who are doing this sort of thing, and my own ideas and just kind of experimenting with my intermediate algebra course. So all of that stuff that you're seeing is still needs to be discussed. We have not, so I do not want to say this is what we're doing in terms of how exactly it's going to go. But I think it can give you kind of a vision as to how it might work. And so all those numbers of modules that they have to complete, and the percentages, and all of that is, and even what we do, how we teach these modules is still up in the air. But we would certainly welcome any ideas from the developmental ed team as to what they think about what is already there, feedback one way or another, and what ideas that you have as to how we might be able to organize this modular approach on a practical level. So I know this is a lot of information, a lot of reading for you to peruse, but let me just kind of visit with you, I think, a little bit about what some areas that I think are going to be more immediate follow-up, I think, that we need to consider here. First off, one of the things I think we need to consider is, and I'm not quite sure if we even have this yet, but we have incompletes, but I don't necessarily know if we have established in our listing a progress grade, if that's even possible yet. And if that's not possible, that may be something that this developmental team may want to introduce to the college and push that forward. Maybe it's through president's staff or something like that, to maybe establish a progress grade. And that may also be a Lori question. Another thing that I think that is important here, especially in terms of the modular approach, because I know that this is kind of radical. Other schools who have done this also use Banner. So it is my understanding, although I am not a Banner expert by any stretch of the imagination or reality, that Banner can chart the completion of modules as long as they're clearly defined. And so that's obviously the first task, and we're doing that. We've got to, I feel like we're almost there, but I'd still, like I said, I'd still like to make an additional change. But we should be able to assign the module numbers, as is in part 3, with BAM, basic algebra, and intermediate algebra. So that when students complete those modules, it can be charted in Banner, and they can get credit for that progress and those courses. This is also a Lori question, but I think that we're going to need to have a meeting with the registrar here very shortly, now that we've got something to tell them, and be able to get, okay, how can we make this sort of thing happen? I also think that we need to make sure that this will work with financial aid. I think it should, because the offerings of these courses would be within the start and end dates of the semester. So I don't think we're going to have a financial aid issue, as we have had with this whole idea of the mastery learning stuff that we've been doing and the math seminar. We should not have any issue with start and end dates. And we also should not have any issue with eligibility, as long as students are working towards completion. They should be passing these college prep math courses, and so every semester is a new course. So we shouldn't have any eligibility issues either, unless, of course, if we have progress grades, would probably be an eligibility issue. But if they pass with an A, B, or C, shouldn't have an issue. The other thing that we need to do, probably relatively quickly, once we again make sure we got all of our modules set, is to present them to workforce training departments. So we talk, in the syllabus, you'll see that I outline kind of learning plans for students. The the learning plans would in essence be based upon what, especially if they're going into a career, what the folks in that career area need their students to have. And so we need to be able to present these modulars to the workforce training folks and let them take a look at them now and say, okay, my students need these. And if they can get these, then get them into my program. And so this will save the students time and money of being able to get through what they need to get through. And in many cases, what maybe have taken a year, it may just take a semester if they work hard and complete the modules that they need to complete, and then they can enter into that program. Obviously, anybody who's earning an Associate of Arts or Associate of Science is going to need to complete all the modules, because once you complete all the modules, then you go to college algebra. So, and that's the goal. Obviously, there are other issues like assessment. How does assessment work? And I know that that's going to be a question. My vision is, again, if a student assesses into whether it be basic applied math or basic algebra, it doesn't matter. They would enter this modular system, and everybody would start at module 1. Again, because the assessment tests won't necessarily fit our modules, at least certainly not right now. We would have to gather a lot of data to then be able to say, okay, you assessed here on this test, this is where you would go in the modular system. Right now we wouldn't be able to do that, but we would have pre-tests for each module. So if a student does assess into basic algebra, let's say, even if they start in module 1, they should be able to pass the first few pre-tests, and not necessarily, so again, it would save them time and money, and that would just be a few days of passing those pre-tests. But we've got that. We've got communication with advisors and making sure that they understand how to help their students and their advisees get into the right courses and get into the right sequence on this. Marketing, we haven't even touched that yet. How do we market this thing? How do we sell this? How do we make it sound cool? What name do we put on it? What graphic do we have? All those sorts of things. We obviously haven't selected any textbooks or resources yet for these things, for either course yet. The developing of the daily learning experiences for students, and just how does this work on a daily basis? How are we going to teach this material? Those are all still discussions that are going to have to take place. Look, I'm sure that you have a ton of questions as to exactly how this is going to work. I'm sure I've got some of the answers, but maybe not all. So I would certainly welcome, and even though I'm absent, I would certainly welcome a record of your feedback in terms of just what you think about, especially on the modular approach, because it is so radical, what you think about the expectations and the instructional piece, what you like, what you don't like, and also what questions do you have? What questions do we need to answer? Or do we need an answer for when it comes to this? Because this whole idea of this modular approach, these shadow courses, it is totally different. It is something that we have never done here at Barton before. It is possible to do it, I believe, but I'm sure that there are a ton of questions. And so I think those are things that, as you discuss here, I think those are some things that you can write down, and so that we can pursue answers as a team. Thanks so much, and look forward to hearing some of the responses.